So here we are, chapter 4 of Iron John, and I want to jump right into chapter 4 with a continuation of where we left off in the story of Iron John. And the title of this chapter of Robert Bly's book is The Hunger for a King in the Time of No Father. So remember, the boy eventually made it to this city and didn't have a craft, didn't have a skill, so he took up a job working for a cook inside the castle, and he was carrying water and wood and cleaning up ashes. And so we continue. Once when it happened that no one else was at hand, the cook ordered the boy to carry the food to the royal table, but because the boy did not want his golden hair to be seen, he kept his cap on. Such a thing that had never happened in the king's presence. And he said, "When you come to the royal table, you must take your cap off." And the boy answered, "Oh Lord, I cannot. I have a sore place on my head." The king called up the cook, scolded him, and demanded how he could take in such a boy into his service, and told him to fire the boy and get him out of the castle. So Robert Bly spends chapter 4 going into great detail about how the lack of a positive father in the family unit, in community, in society, and this has been going on worse and worse over time, is degrading our cultures. It's destroying lives, and I don't disagree with that. I think fathers that are not in the home, or they're in the home but disconnected, or even maliciously intent in these relationships, it's common sense. But I don't think that's what Iron John is about, and he makes that contention. And I want to, I've said this a couple of times, and I want to reiterate that this is an old story told by mouth for thousands of years, and there's good reason for that, right? That the stories aren't just life lessons; they're greater truths that also communicate how we operate and view and have motivations in the world. And so in a world that didn't have the scientific method and didn't have the rigors of science, how did people just like us articulate how the mind worked? Well, they used myth, legend, fairy tales, and they developed these characters. Now, Carl Jung cleverly discovered that not only are these myths have characters that resemble, but they are actually archetypical, meaning that they're universal across people. And so within each of us, we have motivations like, thirst and hunger and sleep, and these, primordial drivers are characters fighting for dominance over other characters that say those who formulate goals and want to accomplish things, more sophisticated, rational aspects of the mind. So Iron John characters all are personalities within our consciousness, and these were told over time to describe that. And so it's all happening in the background, but you can see that these characters are playing a role and serving a part, and if things played out a certain way, one may gain more control. One may not participate correctly. And that's what these stories are talking about. It's that if the boy, for instance, would have stayed home, that would have been a negative thing, because he wouldn't have fostered what was to come out of his character if he had not made the journey with Iron John and gone into poverty and gone into service and things like that. So these are all important. So what's happening here with the king? Well, this king is not the same type of king as in the beginning. He's not the father king. He is the king, the idol, the thing that we look up on You can say you call him a sports figure or a politician, somebody that we look up to. Well, why do we do that? Well, because there's a character in our subconscious that drives our attention in that direction, and that's why we idolize those type of people, and why we buy their clothing and things like that. So what's happening here in this chapter is that this king represents the great father, the great king that we are striving to become. We are striving to become rulers of our own lives. And this is what this represents, is that there's this dynamic between these two characters. And the boy does possess and wearing strength, but he's not willing to show that. He's not willing to present that to the king, to his adult self, his self that will encompass the good decisions and the bad decisions and the consequences of his own life, the responsibility of his own life. And he covers it with a cap. Now, so what happens? He's not willing to take the cap off, and this upsets the king. Now, think about this for a minute, right? If you don't present your internal strength into your behavior, that's a negative thing. And that's what the great king, that's what the great father, the second king, you want to say, is telling the boy, is that you have to show your strength in the world. You have to confront the catastrophes of life forthrightly. And it's I look on some of the biblical stories, and there's a good parallel here of Joseph, right, of the Old Testament, that Joseph forthrightly confronted the confrontation, and he got accused of doing something that he didn't really do, and got thrown into jail, but he accepted the consequences, but he presented himself with strength in those. And you would think, well, why didn't he defend himself, and why didn't he fight for what was right? That's strength. No. And that's where we're really getting to it, is that there's a greater strength, there's a greater truth, and that's being presented on forthrightness and authenticity, and that's where I get with this story. So we're leaving the prince now with the cook, and he has to fire him, and so we're going to be going into the next chapter with that. So until then, just a reminder, this Saturday is the men's meetup, May 18th. Check out myrulesforlife.com for all the details. I hope to see you there. So bye.